The blood-curdling scream that split the morning air wasn't human, it was something far worse. Jasper Crenshaw had heard many sounds in his 63 years, farming the rolling hills of Kentucky, but nothing had ever frozen his blood like the agonized shriek that erupted from his mare. Thunder, his 13-year-old Clydesdale, was screaming. Jasper dropped the bucket of grain he'd been carrying, corn kernels scattering across the barn floor like scattered prayers. His weathered hands trembled as he grabbed his walking stick. The old injury from Vietnam still plagued his left leg on cold mornings like this one. But pain meant nothing when Thunder was in distress. The screaming came again, raw and desperate, echoing off the surrounding maples that had just begun their autumn transformation. It was a sound that spoke of terror, of something fundamentally wrong in the natural order of things. Thunder had been his companion since she was a filly, had pulled his wagon through countless harvests, had been as steady and reliable as sunrise itself. Jasper limped toward the sound with surprising speed, his heart hammering against his ribcage. The morning mist clung to the pasture, making everything seem dreamlike and surreal. But this was no dream, this was a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight. As he rounded the corner of his old red barn, the scene that greeted him defied comprehension. His hay wagon, the same one he'd used for 30 years, lay overturned like a giant's discarded toy. Bales of hay were scattered everywhere, some broken open and spilling their golden contents across the dew-soaked grass. Thunder stood beside the wreckage, her massive chest heaving, foam flecking her dark coat. But it wasn't the overturned wagon that made Jasper's stomach drop, it was what lay beneath it. A small hand, no bigger than a child's, protruded from under the heavy wooden frame. The fingers were motionless, pale against the dark earth. Thunder pawed at the ground near the trapped figure, whinnying frantically, her brown eyes wide with an intelligence that seemed almost human in its concern. "Sweet Lord in heaven," Jasper whispered, his voice barely audible over Thunder's distressed calls. He approached carefully, his mind racing. How had a child ended up under his wagon? The nearest neighbor was half a mile away, and he'd been alone on his property since dawn. The wagon must have been poorly secured on the slope, something he'd been meaning to fix for weeks, but had kept putting off. Dropping to his knees beside the overturned wagon, Jasper could see more of the trapped figure now. It was indeed a boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, with sandy hair and wearing clothes that had seen better days. The child's face was turned away, and Jasper couldn't tell if he was breathing. Thunder nudged Jasper's shoulder with her massive head, as if urging him to hurry. The mare's usual calm demeanor had been replaced by an urgency that Jasper had never witnessed before. It was as if she understood the gravity of the situation better than anyone. The wagon was far too heavy for one old man to lift alone. Even with adrenaline coursing through his veins, Jasper estimated it weighed at least 800 pounds when loaded with hay bales. He needed help, and he needed it fast. But first, he had to determine if the boy was still alive. Jasper pressed his ear close to where the boy's chest would be, listening intently through the wooden boards of the overturned wagon. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of Thunder's anxious breathing and the distant call of crows in the oak trees. Then, faint but unmistakable, he heard it. A shallow, labored breath. "He's alive," Jasper whispered, relief flooding through him like warm honey. "Thunder, he's alive." The mare seemed to understand, stepping closer and lowering her great head, as if she too were listening for signs of life. Her dark eyes reflected a depth of emotion that reminded Jasper why he'd always believed horses were among God's finest creations. Moving as carefully as possible, Jasper began clearing away the scattered hay bales that had fallen around the wagon. Each bale weighed 40 pounds, and his arthritic hands protested with every lift. But desperation gave him strength he didn't know he still possessed. The boy remained motionless, but the rise and fall of his chest was becoming more visible. As Jasper worked, "Hold on there, son," Jasper murmured, though he wasn't sure the child could hear him. "We're going to get you out of there." As he cleared more debris, Jasper could see that the wagon's frame had created a small pocket of space. Around the boy, a miracle that had likely saved his life. The heavy wooden side panel was supported by a fallen hay bale, creating just enough Room that the child wasn't completely crushed, but the situation was still dire. The boy's left leg was clearly pinned, and there was a growing pool of blood on the ground near his head. Time was running out. Jasper fumbled for his cell phone, his hands shaking as he dialed 911. The call seemed to take forever to connect. Cell service had always been spotty on his property, nestled as it was between rolling hills that blocked the signal. 911, what's your emergency? This is Jasper Crenshaw at 4247 Hollow Creek Road, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I've got a child trapped under an overturned wagon. He's alive but unconscious. I need paramedics and probably a rescue crew. We're dispatching units now, sir. Can you tell me the child's condition? Jasper knelt down again, peering under the wagon frame. He's breathing but trapped. There's blood. I can't lift this wagon myself. It's too heavy. Sir, do not attempt to move the wagon yourself. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me. But Jasper was already thinking ahead. The nearest fire station was 15 minutes away on a good day, and the winding country roads could add another 10 minutes to their response time. This boy might not have 25 minutes. Thunder whinnied again, more softly this time, and moved to stand directly beside the wagon's overturned bed. She lowered her head and began sniffing around the edges of the wreckage, as if trying to find the best approach to help. An idea began forming in Jasper's mind. Crazy, perhaps, but it might be the boy's only chance. Ma'am, I'm going to try something, he told the dispatcher. My horse is here, and she's strong. If I can rig up some kind of pulley system, sir, please wait for professional help. But Jasper was already moving toward his barn, Thunder following close behind as if she understood his intentions. In 30 years of farming, he'd learned that sometimes you had to take risks to save a life. The boy stirred slightly under the wagon, letting out a small moan that was barely audible. It was the first sound he'd made, and it filled Jasper with hope. They were going to save this child. Somehow, they were going to save him. In his barn, Jasper's hands moved with practiced efficiency despite their trembling. He grabbed his strongest rope, the same one he used for hauling logs, and a heavy-duty pulley he'd installed years ago for lifting hay bales to the loft. Thunder waited patiently in the doorway, her intelligent eyes tracking his every movement. I know this sounds crazy, girl, Jasper said as he gathered his improvised rescue equipment, but you and I are going to have to work together on this one. The dispatcher's voice crackled through his phone, which he'd switched to speaker and clipped to his shirt pocket. Mr. Crenshaw, I need you to stay with the child and monitor his breathing. Don't attempt any rescue. Mum, with all due respect, I've been farming for 40 years and this boy doesn't have time to wait, Jasper replied, limping back toward the overturned wagon with Thunder at his side. Sometimes you've got to improvise. When they reached the accident site, Jasper could see that the boy had shifted slightly. His eyes were fluttering open, a good sign that meant he was regaining consciousness, but it also meant he might panic when he realized his situation. Easy there, son, Jasper said gently, kneeling beside the trapped child. My name's Jasper, and this here is Thunder. We're going to get you out, but I need you to stay real still, okay? The boy's eyes, a startling green color, focused on Jasper's face with difficulty. His lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then, in a whisper so soft it was almost carried away by the morning breeze, it hurts. I know it does, son. What's your name? Colt, the boy managed. Colt Riverside. Thunder's ears perked up at the sound of the boy's voice, and she moved closer, her massive head hovering protectively over the trapped child. Something in her posture reminded Jasper of a mother watching over her foal. Colt's a fine name, Jasper said, working quickly to secure the pulley to a sturdy fence post. Now, Colt, I'm going to ask Thunder here to help me lift this wagon off you. She's strong as an ox and twice as smart. You just keep breathing for me, all right? The boy nodded weakly, his eyes now fixed on Thunder's gentle face above him. Despite his pain and fear, something like wonder crossed his features. She's beautiful, he whispered. Jasper attached the rope to the overturned wagon's frame, his old fingers working with surprising dexterity. The pulley system would give him mechanical advantage, but he'd still need Thunder's strength to make it work. The mare seemed to sense the importance of the moment and stood perfectly still. As he fitted her leather harness, "Mr. Crenshaw," the dispatcher's voice came through his phone again. "Emergency responders are 12 minutes out." 12 minutes might as well be 12 hours. The boy was conscious now, which meant the shock was wearing off, and that could be dangerous if he had internal injuries. The blood pool near his head had grown larger, and his breathing was becoming more labored. "Thunder," Jasper said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used when they were working together in the fields. "We're going to do this slow and steady. Just like hauling logs, girl, just like hauling logs." He positioned himself beside the rope, ready to guide the wagon as Thunder provided the pulling power. The mare looked back at him, and in that moment, Jasper swore he could see understanding in her brown eyes. This was it. This was the moment that would determine whether young Colt Riverside lived or died. "All right, Thunder," Jasper said, his hand on the rope. "Let's bring this boy home." Thunder's muscles bunched beneath her dark coat as she took up the slack in the rope. Jasper positioned himself at the wagon's edge, ready to guide its movement and prevent it from shifting the wrong direction. The pulley system creaked under the strain, and for a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. "Come on, girl," Jasper urged softly, "just like we've done 1,000 times before." The mare leaned into her harness with the steady determination that had made her invaluable on the farm. Slowly, incredibly, the wagon began to rise. The wooden frame groaned in protest, hay bales sliding and shifting as the entire structure lifted inch by precious inch. Colt's eyes widened as he saw daylight growing larger around him. "It's working," he breathed, his voice stronger now that hope had entered the equation. "Don't you move a muscle yet," Jasper warned, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "We need to get this clear of you completely." Thunder continued her steady pull, her hooves finding perfect purchase on the dew-slicked grass. Years of working together had created an almost telepathic communication between horse and man, and she seemed to sense exactly how much pressure to apply and when to pause. The wagon rose higher 2 feet, then 3. Colt's body became fully visible, and Jasper's heart sank at what he saw. The boy's left leg was bent at an unnatural angle, clearly broken, and there was a deep gash across his forehead. That was the source of the blood pooling on the ground. But he was free. "That's it. Thunder, hold it right there," Jasper called. The mare stood like a statue, maintaining tension on the rope while Jasper carefully helped Colt slide away from beneath the suspended wagon. The boy bit back a cry of pain as movement sent agony shooting through his injured leg. But he remained brave and still as Jasper had taught him. "You did it, son," Jasper said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're out." The sound of sirens finally reached them, growing stronger by the second. Thunder's ears swiveled toward the approaching vehicles, but she maintained her position, still holding the wagon aloft as if she understood her job wasn't finished until help arrived. Colt looked up at both his rescuer's man and horse with tears streaming down his dirt-stained face. "Thank you," he whispered, "both of you." The first responders arrived in a flurry of activity, paramedics, firefighters, and a sheriff's deputy all converging on the scene. But as the EMTs took over Colt's care, checking his vitals and preparing him for transport, the boy's eyes never left Thunder. "Mr. Crenshaw," the fire chief approached. That was some quick thinking with the pulley system. Jasper was finally allowing Thunder to lower the wagon back to the ground, the mare responding to his voice commands with the precision of a seasoned partner. "Wasn't just me, Chief Morrison." Thunder here did the heavy lifting. As the paramedics loaded Colt onto a stretcher, the boy reached out his hand toward Thunder. The great mare stepped forward delicately and lowered her head, so the child could touch her soft muzzle. "I'll never forget you," Colt whispered to her. "Never." The ambulance doors closed and the vehicle pulled away, its lights flashing as it headed toward the county hospital. Jasper stood in his pasture, surrounded by scattered hay and overturned equipment. With Thunder beside him, the morning's drama was over, but something had fundamentally changed. "Come on, girl," he said, running his hand along Thunder's neck. "Let's get you some oats. You've earned them." But as they walked toward the barn together, Jasper couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of the story. Something about the way Colt had looked at Thunder, the connection that had formed between them in those desperate moments, suggested their paths would cross again. 3 weeks later, Jasper was mending fence in his back pasture when he heard the sound of tires on gravel. Visitors were rare on his secluded farm, so he set down his wire cutters and walked toward the house. A modest blue sedan was pulling up his driveway, and as it came to a stop, he recognized the passenger. Colt Riverside stepped carefully out of the car, a pair of crutches under his arms and a bright white cast covering his left leg from ankle to knee. His head wound had healed to a thin pink scar across his forehead, but his green eyes were as bright as Jasper remembered. The driver was a woman in her 30s with the same sandy hair. As the boy, clearly his mother, she approached Jasper with tears in her eyes and an expression of profound gratitude. "Mr. Crenshaw, I'm Diana Riverside, Colt's mother. I've been wanting to thank you properly ever since the accident." Jasper removed his work hat, suddenly conscious of his rough appearance. "Ma'am, no thanks necessary. Anyone would have done the same." "That's not true, and you know it," Diana said firmly. "The doctors told me that if Colt had been trapped much longer, his injuries could have been life-threatening. You and your horse saved my son's life." Colt had been scanning the pasture eagerly, and when he spotted Thunder grazing near the pond, his face lit up like Christmas morning. "There she is, Mom. That's Thunder." The mare had noticed them too and was walking toward the fence with her characteristic steady gait. When she reached the group, she extended her head toward Colt, who reached out despite the awkwardness of his crutches to stroke her muzzle. "I told everyone at school about you," Colt said to Thunder, as if she were an old friend. "I told them how you helped save me. Some of them didn't believe a horse could be that smart." Thunder whickered softly, and Jasper could swear she was responding directly to the boy's words. "Mr. Crenshaw," Diana said, "I need to explain something. Colt shouldn't have been on your property that morning. He'd been cutting through your land. On his way to school, it's a shortcut from our trailer park to the bus stop. I had no idea he was trespassing." Jasper waved away her concern. "Kids have been using that path for years. Never bothered me none." "He said he sometimes stopped to watch your horse," Diana continued. "He's always loved animals. But we've never been able to afford much of anything." Something in her tone caught Jasper's attention. He looked more closely at their clothing, clean but worn, patched in places. The car was older, well-maintained but showing its age. This was a family that knew the meaning of struggle. "How the accident happened exactly?" Jasper asked. "I never did get the full story." Colt shifted uncomfortably on his crutches. "I was petting Thunder through the fence, and I guess I leaned too hard on the wagon. It was parked on that little hill, and when I bumped it, it started rolling." He paused, shame coloring his voice. "I tried to stop it, but I slipped and fell, and it went right over me. The important thing is you're all right now," Jasper said gently. "Broken bones heal." "Mr. Crenshaw," Diana said hesitantly, "I was wondering, would it be all right if Colt visited Thunder sometimes? I know it's a lot to ask, but he talks about her constantly. The connection they formed that day, it's helped him heal, mentally as well as physically." Jasper looked at the boy, who was gazing at Thunder with undisguised adoration, and felt something shift in his chest. The farm had been quiet for too long, too empty since his wife Martha had passed 3 years ago. "Ma'am, I think that could be arranged," he said, "but I've got a counter-proposal." Both mother and son looked at him expectantly. "How would you feel about Colt earning some spending money, doing light chores around here? Nothing too strenuous, especially while he's got that cast. But I could use help with feeding, grooming Thunder, mucking stalls when he's up to it." Colt's eyes went wide with hope, while Diana's filled with tears. "You don't have to," she began. "Ma'am," Jasper interrupted gently, "Thunder and I both could use the company." By late October, Colt's visits had become the highlight of Jasper's week. 3 afternoons after school and Saturday mornings, the boy would arrive on his bicycle the cast had come off 2 weeks prior, and set to work with an enthusiasm that reminded Jasper of himself. At that age, more importantly, Thunder had found a new purpose. The mare, who had been growing restless and somewhat melancholy since her workload had decreased in Jasper's retirement years, now had someone who needed her in a different way than hauling wagons or plowing fields. Colt had proven to have a natural gift with horses. His movements around Thunder were instinctive and careful, his voice always calm and reassuring. The boy seemed to understand the mare's moods and needs without being taught, often anticipating what she wanted before Jasper could voice the instruction. "You've got a gift, son," Jasper told him one crisp Saturday morning as they watched Colt lead Thunder through a series of simple exercises. "Not everyone can connect with horses the way you do." Colt beamed at the praise, then grew serious. "Mr. Crenshaw, can I ask you something?" "Course you can. What's going to happen to Thunder when—" The boy struggled with the words, then tried again. "I mean, you're not young anymore, and farms are a lot of work." Jasper had been dreading this conversation, though he'd known it was inevitable. At 63, with no children of his own and a heart condition his doctor had been monitoring, the future of his small farm was an open question. "Been thinking about that myself lately," Jasper admitted. "Thunder's only 13. She's got many good years left in her." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, but Jasper could see the wheels turning in Colt's mind. The boy had grown attached to not just Thunder, but to the routine and responsibility of farm work. He'd gained confidence over the past month, standing taller and speaking up more, even smiling regularly, something his mother had told Jasper he'd rarely done before the accident. That evening, as Colt was preparing to bicycle home, he turned to Jasper with an expression of determined resolve that looked oddly mature on his 12-year-old face. "Mr. Crenshaw, I've been thinking, what if I could help you keep the farm going? I know I'm just a kid, but I'm strong, and I learn fast, and I love being here." Jasper felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Colt, that's a fine thought. But you've got school, and I mean when I'm older," Colt interrupted. "Like, maybe I could work here summers, and then after high school, maybe I could help you run things. Thunder could teach me everything, couldn't you, girl?" The mare, as if summoned by her name, walked over and nudged Colt's shoulder with her head. Her timing was so perfect that both man and boy laughed despite the seriousness of the conversation. "That's a big decision to make when you're 12, Jasper said carefully. "You might change your mind about wanting to be a farmer." "I won't," Colt said with quiet conviction. "This place, Thunder, working with my hands, it feels like home in a way nowhere else ever has." That night, Jasper lay awake thinking about the boy's words. The farm had been in his family for 2 generations, but he'd always assumed it would be sold when he could no longer manage it. The idea that it might continue, that Thunder might have someone to love and care for her long after he was gone, it was a possibility he'd never dared to consider. Maybe, just maybe, the accident that had brought them together was actually the beginning of something wonderful. 5 years later, on a warm May morning, Jasper stood at his kitchen window watching 17-year-old Colt work Thunder in the practice ring they'd built together. The young man now moved with the confident grace of someone who'd found his calling, and Thunder responded to his every cue with the trust that came from years of partnership. The farm had never looked better. What had started as weekend chores had evolved into a true apprenticeship, with Colt learning not just horse care but crop rotation, equipment maintenance, and 100 small skills that made a farm successful. His grades in school remained excellent. He'd maintained his promise to his mother about education. But everyone knew where his heart truly lay. Diana Riverside had remarried a good man named Frank Buchanan, and their family situation had stabilized considerably. But even with their improved circumstances, Colt spent every free moment at the farm, and no one questioned the rightness of it anymore. Thunder, now 18 and still in her prime, had become something of a local legend. The story of the rescue had spread through the community, and she'd been featured in the county newspaper as the horse with a heart of gold. But more than her fame, it was her ongoing relationship with Colt that truly mattered. They'd developed the kind of wordless communication that horsemen dream of, a bond forged in crisis and strengthened through years of mutual devotion. "Morning, Mr. Crenshaw," Colt called out, leading Thunder toward the barn for their daily grooming routine. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about the Hendersons wanting to lease the back 40 for their cattle. Jasper stepped outside, his cane steady in his hand. The heart surgery 2 years ago had slowed him down, but it had also given him the gift of time to train Colt properly. Time to see the boy grow into someone worthy of carrying on the farm's legacy. "And what's your thinking?" Jasper asked, settling into the rocking chair Colt had built him for his 68th birthday. "I think we should do it, but with conditions," Colt said, beginning Thunder's daily brush down with the methodical care Jasper had taught him. Their cattle would keep the grass managed, but we'd need guarantees about fence maintenance and water access. Jasper smiled. The boy's instincts were sound, cautious, but practical. Over the years, Colt had proven himself not just capable but wise beyond his years, someone who thought in terms of long-term stewardship rather than short-term profit. "There's something I want to discuss with you," Jasper said, reaching into his shirt pocket for the envelope he'd been carrying for weeks. "Your 18th birthday's coming up next month." Colt looked up from Thunder's flank, brush poised in mid-stroke. "Yes, sir. I've been talking with my lawyer and with your mother and Frank. If you're still of a mind to make farming your life, I'd like to make you a partner in this operation, legal papers and all." The brush slipped from Colt's hand, clattering to the barn floor. Thunder turned her head to look at the young man with what Jasper could only describe as amusement in her dark eyes. "Mr. Crenshaw, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it seriously," Jasper replied. "It's not charity, son. You've earned this. You've kept this farm running better than I ever did alone. And Thunder here thinks the sun rises and sets on you." As if to prove his point, Thunder nuzzled Colt's shoulder, leaving a streak of affection on his work shirt. "What about college?" Colt asked, though his voice carried more hope than concern. "Agriculture program at the state university. Has a good reputation," Jasper said. "You could commute, keep working here, learn the business side of things. Best of both worlds." Colt was quiet for a long moment, his hand resting on Thunder's neck as he considered the magnitude of what was being offered. Finally, he looked up at Jasper with eyes that shone with unshed tears. "Yes, sir. I'd be honored to be your partner," Thunder whinnied softly, as if adding her approval to the arrangement. And for a moment the three of them stood there in the morning sun, man, boy, and horse, connected by bonds that had begun with an accident and grown into something that would last generations. As Colt picked up his brush and returned to grooming Thunder, humming softly under his breath, Jasper reflected on the strange ways life could unfold. 5 years ago, he'd been a lonely old man facing an uncertain future. Now he had an heir, a purpose, and the knowledge that Thunder would be loved and cared for long after he was gone. Sometimes the most beautiful stories began with the most terrifying screams, and sometimes the best families were the ones you chose rather than the ones you were born into. Looking at Colt and Thunder working together in perfect harmony, Jasper knew with absolute certainty that his farm, their farm now, was in the very best of hands. The circle was complete, and the future was bright.